Hello, I'm Dr. Mark Mouw from Chiro Matchmaker. Super excited to be with you tonight. I know a lot of you have been watching our pro tip video series on the successful associate doctor roadmap, and it's all coming into here tonight to do a webinar, a deep dive into having a successful associate doctor relationship. I don't want to waste any of your time. I'm going to get to it right away. So I'm going to share my screen so you can see my slides, and we're going to get at it. So during this webinar, I'm going to be discussing the relationship that goes along with an owner and an associate. And when these relationships are great, I'm going to tell you, it's a win-win. They're wonderful. But when these relationships are bad or they go south, I'm going to tell you there's nothing worse. Not only do you lose an associate, you probably lose some patients, you may lose some staff, you're going to lose some money, and I've even heard people losing clinics. So this is hard. This is difficult. We're doctors. We're really not built to hire staff and teams, especially associates, because what we usually do is we want to usually hire a mini-me, and I'm going to talk about why that's not a great thing here in a few minutes. But I've got experience around this. You know, I've been in the profession for 17 years, and I'll tell you, I've got a pain and scar tissue that goes along with this from multiple angles. My wife and I were both associates when we came out of school, and to be honest with you, we were taken advantage of financially in that first associateship. So when we opened our own practice 15 years ago, my goal was not to allow that to happen. But after 13 associates, 11 really awesome experiences, 2 did go south. And because they went south, they were wrong hires. And because they went south, not only did I lose time, energy, and focus in that practice, but I also lost money. So what I'm going to tell you tonight, over the next 25 to 30 minutes, is I'm going to give you value that's going to take you to that next level when it comes to the associate you have in your practice or the associate you're looking for. So stick along with me. We're going to walk side by side through this process and help you understand how to make this relationship a success. A win for you, a win for the doctor, and a win for the patient. So let's be honest. Doctors usually ask me the wrong questions when they come to me as they move forward in what they're looking for in an associate. And what I have to tell you is what we're going to do is we're going to go in depth and we're going to cover these 5 questions. Number 1, how do you know when you're ready to hire an associate? Some docs think they need one when they just are super busy and they're doing all the work. Some docs aren't sure when they need them. Some docs grow too far, they plateau, and then they drop back down. So we're going to answer this question tonight for you. How do you know who you're looking for? This who I'm going to answer as well, because doctors are all built differently. There's multiple types of doctors, what I'll tell you, and I'm going to do a deep dive into that sooner than later. Next, how do I find them? Probably the biggest complaint or call that I get is, Doc, I've been looking for somebody for 6 months or a year or 18 months, 2 years, or I've never found or interviewed docs that successfully. I've reached out to the schools and the alumni associations and so forth. I just can't find doctors. And unfortunately, a lot of docs out there, what they do is they'll take the first person with the pulse. Hey, I'll take the first person who wants to come to my town and work with me, and I'll worry about if they fit later. The problem is that you do incorrectly what most businesses don't do. They don't just hire a person and then put them into a job. What they do is they look at putting a person into a job that they created. They create a job description, and what they want to do is they want to find the right person who's going to work in that position. We're going to discuss that tonight as well. How do you do an interview? How do you interview them? I've got a guide for you that I'm going to help you go through the interview process so you make sure you hire right during your interview. And then how do you set up successful expectations and agreement? That's the next one. I get the call all the time. Hey, Doc, you know what? I just hired an associate 2 or 3 months ago, and man, it's already going sideways. Why is it going sideways? And I asked them, well, what did training look like? What was the expectation? What were the agreements that were in place? How about scorecards and KPIs? And how are you coaching and mentoring this doctor? So I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of different ways to talk about this, but these are the 5 big points I'm going to work with. And the reason why this is so important is we know this stat. We've looked at this stat. In associateship doctors usually end within 18 months, over 67% of the time. That's terrible. And the reason why is because we don't know who to hire, where to hire, how to hire, what the exit strategy is like. So I'm going to do a deep dive into this, but just quickly, if you've already heard things that you say, hey, I'd love to ask a question, I have some answers that I need in my situation. You know what you can always do is there's a schedule once link attached. Pop onto that. I'd love to get on a call with you. I'd love to do a brainstorming session and see if you're ready, how we could help out, how I can give you direction. That's what I'm here for. That's what we love to do at Chiro Matchmaker. So jump on my schedule once link, find a time, but still continue to listen because we're going to add real huge value tonight, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the Successful Associate Doctor Roadmap. And a lot of you asked for this earlier on my first pro tip. This is what we were giving out, this great infographic. But there are really 10 steps through the successful associate doctor relationship. And it's going to start high level. Number one is going to be an introductory call with me as we break apart what you're looking for. And I'm going to go and do a deep dive on each one of these points as I move forward. But what I want to do is take you through each one of these. But number one, intro call. Number two, discovery process. Who are you looking for? What are you trying to create? Number three, generating candidates. Once again, how do I find somebody to come into my practice? I haven't had an ad out there forever and no one's responding. I'm going to help you understand how we can help you generate these candidates. Number four, candidate assessments. We need to assess the doctor to make sure they're a great fit. And we have some license assessments that we use to make sure that they are a right fit as we build out your job model or job description. Number five is the interview process. Doc, I don't know how to interview. I'm going to go through our 5-step hiring guide of how to onboard an interview process of an associate. Number six is hiring the associate. So what happens at the hire? What's the contract? What's the agreements? What's the compensation package and so forth look like for certain types of doctors? This is really where Chiro Matchmakers ends, but that's not the way it ends in this successful associate-doctor relationship. So what we see is that there's a 7, 8, 9, and 10, and that's the onboarding. That's the training. That's the mentoring. That's the coaching. It's the training and equipping, which is number 8. It's the development and retaining, hopefully long-term or 2 or 3 years, spinning them off into their own practice or letting them go and do their own thing, or like I said, making a satellite office. And ultimately, none of us are going to be here forever. None of us are probably going to practice forever. I know we love being behind the table, changing people's lives, but number 10 talks about exit strategy. We need to start with the end in mind. What's it look like? Are you hiring a doctor to bring them on, to sell the practice to them a year down the road, 5 years down the road, 20 years down the road, or never? And to be honest with you, that question needs to be answered up at 1, 2, 3, and 4 so that we look for the right doctor that does that. So as we look into this, this is our Chiro Matchmakers 6 steps. Once again, I'm going to do a deep dive into each one of these and go through them and break them down for you. So I'm going to jump right in to number 1. And number 1 is this introductory call that we talked through. And how do you know when you are ready to hire an associate? High level, there's 5 criteria that needs to happen before you decide to move forward. Number 1, is your practice systematized? What I mean by this is it the Wild West in your practice? Nothing's written down. Each person knows what they're doing, but if you lost one, you wouldn't know where to go. If you're guilty, raise your hand at home. I can't see you. But what we need to have is we need to have systemization, right? Do you have systems? Do you have procedures? Do you have processes to make sure that your CAs and then your associate knows what to follow? Do you have CA manuals? Do you have DC manuals that you can train out of, and everything's written down and it's not just in your head? So your practice needs to be systemized. You throw a doc into an office that's not systematized, you're looking at failure. Number 2, is your team an established, mature team? Not a bunch of young CAs that are running around, not maybe even a young office. I've seen successful office bring on an associate 12, 18 months in because they have the detailed work above, the systems, procedures, and processes in place, but do you have a mature team? They work together. There's stability there. There's not constant turnover. Not a good situation to bring a doc into an immature, unstable team. Number 3, do you have a training culture? And what I mean about this is not a plug-and-play situation. What I'm talking about as an example is Tom Brady. So Tom Brady went from the Patriots to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you could say, oh, you know what? Tom Brady's one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. He's the GOAT. Let's go ahead and just stick him into the offense in Tampa There should be no problem. Let's roll. That's not what's happening. Even during the summer when he wasn't supposed to be practicing with his receivers, he was on a high school football field 3, 4, 5 days a week going through the playbook, the football manual, the DC manual, right? He's actually practicing. He's training. He's mentoring. He's getting expectations of what he wants his receivers and his running backs to do. Why? Because it's a training culture. He trains many, many of hours. He plays very few hours on Sundays, 16 weekends a year, right? So what I'm talking about is you have to be willing to be a mentor. You have to be willing to be a coach. Your doctors call me up and they're like, hey, I need an associate just to help give me some, free time. I just want them to grow my practice for me, or I want them to help me double my practice. Well, what does that look like? Well, I just want to put them in, and day one, I don't have to worry about it. Stop. Time out. You have to worry about it. You have to take the time to train them. Number 4, can you afford to pay an associate chiropractor? This is one of the other calls that I get, right? 9 months or a year in, and the owner is pissed at an associate that they hired on their own, didn't put them in the right position, didn't have a job description of what they were trying to create. And what they're saying is, hey, doc, all of a sudden I'm paying this associate $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 a month. And number one, they're not doing what I was expected, more than likely because the associate didn't know the expectations, right? And number two, I'm paying this doc my profit, and I'm starting to go underwater. I used to be putting money away in retirement and paying bills. Now my profit's going to this guy or gal, and it's a sad situation. It's going sideways. So what we try to do is we try to help bail this guy out to make sure he understands who the doctor he hired is and put him in the right position, or find a position for this associate in another office and then help him find the doc that he was actually looking for through our discovery process. And then number 5, can you bring in enough new patients to support this doctor? Can you put the gas pedal down to bring new patients into your practice? Or are you going to step back and see less new patients, let this doctor see some of your new patients in referrals, and they're going to pick up on the adjusting while you maybe do day 1, day 2 in the marketing in the practice? Or is this new doctor going to have to produce his own new patients? He's going to have to go out and get them. I'm going to tell you right now, just a little secret I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. 75% of doctors in our profession are not marketing doctors. They are not good at going out getting patients. And I hear this expectation so often with docs who call me on the phone and want that from our docs or want this from their associates, okay? So we have to be able to support them with enough new patients. Maybe it's you hiring a new business development director so that you can increase your new patients. You can maybe do day 1, day 2, and this doctor maybe adjusts a bunch of patients and does exams and re-exams and so forth. It depends on that model, and that's what we need to discuss in this situation. So let's flip back onto our chart. So we have here is our successful associate doctor roadmap. Once again, we talked about the introductory call. Now we're going to move into the discovery process. And remember, the discovery process is you and I getting on the phone and doing a deep dive. It's usually a 1 to 2 hour conversation over 2 phone calls. We do something that's called a snapshot. And that snapshot's going to help us understand really the 28 questions that are necessary to help us really build a job description. And then number 2, what we're going to do during the discovery process is we're going to have you take our behavioral assessment so we can find out how you're built. So we can get a great match for you, right? So 5 critical questions to ask before you hire an associate. Number 1, what are you trying to accomplish? This goes back to the 4 limited resources that all human beings have: time, energy, focus, and money. What are you trying to accomplish? Number 1, are you trying to accomplish time freedom? Are you in the office 5, 6 days a week? And what you're trying to do is you're trying to back down to maybe 2, 3, 4 days a week. Put a couple half days in there so you can be with your family. Maybe it's helping get some practice growth. Maybe it's increasing your capacity. You're like, hey, doc, I'm at 150, 250, 350 visits a week. I can't go to where I want to go. I have patients waiting for 2, 3, 4 weeks to come into my practice as new patients. I need somebody to help increase my capacity. Maybe it's to reduce exposure, right? Exposure means this, man, if you're an owner operator, you're the only doc in your office, you get hurt, you get injured, guess what? Your practice is going to have an issue. Quick story, I busted my hand falling on the ice probably 4 or 5 years ago. I had 3 associates at that time like we do now, and luckily I was out of practice for 8 weeks, but my office just hummed along because I had the team, I had the associate doctors that were there to keep this practice up. I just went in and started talking with patients all day. It was awesome. It was a great relationship builder, and it turned out to be a great experience, but I've heard nightmare experiences with this. Number 4, maybe you're looking to start a satellite office. Maybe you're looking to start 2, 3, 4, 5 satellite offices, so you need the right doctor. Remember, the doctor who's going to stay with you long-term as a wingman associate is not the doctor to put out in a satellite clinic. By the way, scar tissue. I learned that from my experience with one of my first associates. I took a doc that should have been seeing patients with me for 10, 15, 20 years, and I put him into a practice by himself. He was awesome in our office, wasn't a right fit in that office. That was before I knew this information. So what I wish somebody would have taught me before. Maybe number 5, maybe it's an exit strategy. Maybe you're 5 years out from retiring. Gosh bless you, that's awesome what you've given to this profession, but a person who's going to buy your practice isn't always the one that's built to be there 10, 15, 20 years to purchase your practice. Really what we're talking about is we're talking about someone who we call or coin an entrepreneur or a business builder, which I'll get to in just a short minute. So number 2, what does success look like to you? What that means is, okay, you need to have clarity around success in your practice. If you can't talk about what success looks like now, next, and ultimate, how are you going to give clarity to the expectations and agreements you're going to have with your associate? So now, what's it look like now? Where are you at? What's your volume? What's your collection per visit? What is your overhead? What's the cost per new patient? All these numbers now to make sure that you can have success in the future by adding another doc onto your practice. The next is, okay, give me your next view, your 12-month view. What's it look like if you hire an associate in your practice, okay? What's that associate doing? What's he doing with the team? How's he going to lead? Is he going to lead? What's that look like? And then I'll ask you, what's ultimate? Ultimate's, I say 4 to 5 years. I think it's hard to think out past that, but ultimately, what 4 or 5 years? Do you want this doctor you're hiring now to still be with you, adjusting patients? Do you want this doctor in a satellite office? Do you want this doctor for 2 or 3 years so they can sprout their wings and they can go start their own practice? What's it look like when you add this associate doctor? Number 3, what do you want this associate doctor to do? Once again, the biggest mistake I mentioned earlier is the doctor who says, I need to hire a mini-me. Everybody starts out by thinking they hire a mini-me. The problem is you wouldn't work for you. You would be opening your own office. So in most cases, hiring a mini-me, unless your objective is to actually start a satellite clinic or maybe sell the practice to them, is not to hire a mini-me. It's actually the opposite. It's to hire your yang. Your yang is your opposite. That's usually what's going to give you the most growth. But through this discovery process, we do a deep dive into that. Do you looking for a doc to do marketing for you? Are they going to be the attraction doc? This doc only makes up about 10, 15% of our population, all right? Are you wanting somebody who can convert and close and have long-term retention and love referrals and patients just love seeing him and they're there for 10, 15, 20 years with you? Differently built doctor, different type of blood type doctor, which is really important to us. Are they going to be with you long-term or short-term? Are they going to be maybe the x-ray doc and the exam doc? Totally different doctor that we talk across that board. What's your practice model? How does it run? Are you going to have a doctor building their own practice inside of your practice? That personally happens to be my model. Some of the best models I see out there is the doctor who actually you're sharing patients and you're seeing patients under the same roof. You're all seeing the same patients on maybe day one doc, day 2, the other. And you guys are sharing adjustments. So if you go on vacation or unfortunately something exposure, you break a bone, patients are used to seeing another doctor or 2 in your practice. And then number 5, how does this relationship end? Remember, always think about the exit strategy. Where do you want this to go? Doc, I've been in the practicing for 10 years. I'm going to practice for another 30. What I'd love to do is I'd love to have a doc come alongside of me and we tackle this together for the next 20 years. Is that doctor's build is much different than the associate that says, okay, I want somebody to come in here and help me build this office, double the office, build and practice and market and go out and do talks and lectures and love to do screenings and they get energy off it. That doctor is going to be with you for a short period of time. Maybe a year or 2 because they're not built long-term to stay with you. I'll explain to you how that works in just a couple minutes, some of the behavioral testing that we do. So as we start to talk through that and we go into the next step of this successful associate doctor roadmap, I'm going to jump on to number 3. And this is usually the biggest question I get. And the biggest question I get is, Doc, how do you find candidates? I've been advertising. I posted at my school. I'm in the alumni. I'm in the state association. I put out on Indeed. How does it work? Well, just to let you know a little bit about our process is that we are looking to help generate doctors and matches for you. We're looking for candidates. So it all starts for us. After we do the discovery process with you, we build this awesome job model and finding out what type of doctor you're looking for, which we coined an avatar. What we're looking to do then is we're looking very specifically, our team afterwards literally starts to create ads that are specific to attracting the right doctor for your practice. After we create those ads, we okay them with you. After we okay them with you, then because we have recruiter status on all the 7 major recruiter sites, we can go out and start to post, and we can start to reach out to doctors, IM them, build this relationship. And what we do is we have this strategic ad placement that's going to attract the right doctor in our direction because of the way we actually use the wording in the ad in what you're looking for in your practice. Number 3, what happens is resumes come into us. We analyze the resumes, we look over the resumes, and then as we get in and talk about that next step at number 5 in the interview process, number 4 and number 5, the candidate assessment and the interview process, what I'll say is that what we're looking for is we're looking at a very specific behavioral assessment match. We call it a 90% avatar match in the analytics and the algorithm of this software that we have for behavioral assessments. So we know that number 1, as we go through it, the resume looks great. Our team's going to do an initial interview, which is created out of the discovery process that we would do with you. And then number 3, what happens is we're going to have them take a behavioral assessment to make sure they're a 90% match or better. So we know culturally they're going to match with you, and behavioral wise, they're going to do what you want in your practice. Then your job through the interview process is finding out their personality and their core values and vision, which I'm going to get to in just a couple minutes. But if right now, if you know you've already had ads out there, you've been looking for doctors and you need somebody right now to have, you need to find doctors right now, and that's your issue, please reach out to me. I'm tracking with you. You're tracking with me. You get it. It's hard to find these leads. Let us come in. Give me a call. Let's have a chat. Let's do a brainstorming session. Let's talk about what you're trying to create. So find that schedule once link on here. Let me know how I can help you out. Let's get on that call. Would love to go forward with you in that process. But as we jump forward, we take a look at number 4, and that's the right match for the right job, the candidate assessment. So let's talk about this a little bit. So when we start to talk about getting clarity around the right person for the right job, we talk about the 4 rights. But once again, back up high level, we need to understand during that discovery is what's the objective of this doctor. Why are you hiring? What are you doing in your practice that you need another associate, or you need an associate, or you want to add an associate? Number 2, what's the vision of your practice right now? What's it look like next 12 months from now? And what does it look like 3 to 5 years from now, which we call ultimate? Number 3, what's the model? What's the model right now? Are you going to share patients? Or is the doc going to come in and build a practice inside of your clinic as an associate, not an independent contractor, but as an associate? Number 4, what role are they going to have in your practice? Are they going to be attracting and working in marketing? Are they going to be in conversion where they're in sales and doing day 1, day 2 and closing plans financially? Number 3, are they going to be a caregiving doctor and really in charge of retention? So just to let you know, a retention long-term doctor is much, much different, like I said before, from the doctor who's going to be the marketing doctor. The doctor who's a marketing doctor and is really good at it, what do you think is going to happen if you don't really take care of them well with salary and commissions and bonuses? What's going to happen is they're usually going to leave, right? So what we want to say is, what's this doctor going to do? Are they an exam doc? And then the other end of that is maybe they're a satellite clinic doc. And then number 5, what's the long-term? What's the short-term goals? What's the buyout strategy? What's the buy-in strategy? Certain types of doctors won't stay with you long unless they have an opportunity to actually buy in, and that's something we got to take a look at. So let's look at the 4 rights, making sure the right person's in your practice. So as you look, first right is number 1, core values and vision story. This is really the personal part of it, right? You have core values in your practice, I hope. I'm sure you have a vision story and a mission of what you're trying to create. When you bring a doctor into your practice and you have an initial interview with them and you talk about your core values and you talk about the vision story of what you're trying to create, if that doctor's not fully on board and super excited about where you're going, guess what? This is going to fail in the relationship, right? There's no way it can go forward. This guy might need a job so much, he's going to say yes and yes and yes. But what you need to do is you need to dig in and make sure he has those values and he on track with your mission story and your vision story. Number 2, accountability chart. Once again, what's this doctor going to do in your practice? So what's the role? And then what's the E&A, expectations and agreement? What's this doctor's job look like so he knows what winning looks like? And what are the agreements that he's going to have on a monthly, weekly, daily basis, quarterly in your practice, which goes to the right work? Is this doctor doing the right job in your office? You know as well as I do, you are great at certain things in your practice. There's probably 3 or 4 things that you're a genius in. It might be marketing, it might be closing, it might be speaking, it might be adjusting. You might have an awesome technique, but I'm going to tell you, I'm guilty just like you are. I'm not awesome at everything. There are certain things that I'm really good at, and guess what I do with the other things that I'm not great at? Is I surround myself with people who are great at it. I surround myself with people who are geniuses in those areas in my practice. So once again, I don't have to be there very much. My associates run the practice with my team that's in place, and that's when you truly have a business that is scalable, durable, and sooner or later transferable. So we need to make sure they're in the right work. And then the 4th, are they doing it the right way? And how they do it the right way is you being a mentor. I've already said this, but I get it so many times. Doctors don't understand that you need to mentor, coach, be a peer, but be there for this doctor. You need to train. You need to have the resources to train. What is there? Every single week in our practice, we have training. It's a 45-minute to an hour session. My one associate's been with me for over 10 years now. The second associate's been with me over 5 years, and the third one with over 3 years, and we still train 52 weeks a year. Why? Because you have to train to get what you want. And that doctor needs to understand what the specifics are in your practice, especially the first 60 to 90 days. So as we discuss this, the 4 rights, the right person in the right role, doing the right work the right way. So I just want to show you a quick picture. These are what we call our avatars. This is internal communication amongst our team. But after we get done doing a discovery process with a doctor, what we do is we build their avatar out. And what you're going to see is the rainbow here. And that rainbow is just a extreme from one end to the other. There's nothing and no one's built black and white. What we are is there's a gray line when we start to discuss what we're built as chiropractors. So what you'll see is you're going to see a red race car, you're going to see an SUV in the middle, and you're going to see this purple pickup truck. Well, what we've coined is, if you take a look, we have what's on the one end, which we call entrepreneurs. These are doctors who are businessmen or women. They're built high volume. They're built intense like a business person. They just happen to be a chiropractor. In the middle, this is coined a business builder. And then on the far end is our classic pickup truck. This is our caregiver. And how we've come about this is really based on the behavioral assessment. It's called ProScan. And this behavioral assessment, what it does is it takes a look at the 4 cornerstone traits. This assessment is 10 to 15 minutes. It's amazing. It gives us 22 pages of information on this person. But really what I'm going to do is high level. I'm going to talk about the 4 things that we really take a look at in hiring. Number 1, we take a look at the first cornerstone trait, which is the take charge trait. Is this person dominant or is this person more supportive? The second trait is what we call the people trait. Is this person extroverted or is the person more reserved? The third trait is patience. Does this person have patience or is this person more urgent? And then number 4 is systems. Are they a conformist? Will they follow the rules and are they detailed and regulated? Or below the line is what we call independent. They want to do their own things. So imagine if you brought in a doctor who had high dominance, high extroverted, very low patience, and low conformity, they're independent. You're like, this doc's going to help me create just an awesome office. All of a sudden, 6 to 9 months down the road, you're putting the brakes down. And the reason why is this doctor's literally taking over your practice. Your CAs are following, and the patients are going like, oh man, I love this guy or gal more. Then this guy leaves and goes down the street, and you wonder where your team and your staff went. He was awesome. He's going to help you build your practice. It sounds great. That guy's a red race car. He's right up over here. guess what? This guy or gal is good in your practice for about 6 months. That's it, okay? And the ProScan assessment is going to help tell us how that person's built. If you're going, doc, I just want somebody to help me come along, and this doc really sounds awesome. We do a ProScan assessment of them. They turn out to be this. This isn't the right fit for you. If you say, hey, I'm going to sell my practice in 6 months to a year from now, beautiful fit. So we can tell you how dominant they are. We'll never hire a doctor that's more dominant than the owner. That's so important, right? But if you want somebody who's patient, if you want somebody who's loyal, if you want somebody who's detailed, you want somebody to stay with you for a long period of time, we're going to be able to tell you. We can actually measure that. That's a secret we have in our inside of Chiro Matchmakers, is we can actually measure. It's not a secret. Everybody knows as we go through it, but we can actually measure how long a person's going to stay with you. If they have high loyalty, they're highly detailed, they have lots of conformity, they have high patience. This is that caregiver. That's that pickup truck. And to let you know, 70 to 75% of our profession are built as doctors. Why did they go to chiropractic school? To take care of patients. Why do they love to adjust? Why do they love to diagnose? Why do they love to do re-exams? Why do they love to see results in their patients? Why? Because they're doctors. If we would just learn and understand, especially for those of you that are red race cars, and I'll talk about this blue business builder in just a second, if we would just learn to bring these doctors that are caregivers underneath our roof and be with us for 5, 10, 15 years, not only would you change your practice, but you would really change the face of what chiropractic's about. Why? Because these people, these guys and gals who just want to love on patients should never start their own practice. What they should do is they should be working for a doctor who cares about them. They should treat them correctly with the right salary that's in place as a doctor that they are, and get great, awesome results in your practice. Now, this green SUV you're going to see, SUV can be one extreme or the other. So you might have a yellow SUV, which is maybe, or a green SUV that's more of a Lamborghini or a Range Rover, but you might have the Nissan Pathfinder that's more of a blue. This person has a little bit higher extrovertedness. They're not so much reserved, so they can do some marketing for you and so forth. They'll help you build your office. But a lot of times what we see is this is a doctor in 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, wants a part of the pie, or they'll go off on their own. So if you're looking at doing that with this type of person, that's awesome. But once again, you have to build a job description and see what you're trying to create. Because these attributes, their culture, their core values, the right person in the right position, right? If we go back, if the right person in the right role, doing the right work the right way, what has to take place is they have to be culturally, behaviorally, and personally built the way that you're looking for in your practice. And there are ways to measure those things. When this happens, your practice can flourish. So as we take a look at the candidates and we move into what this assessment was looking like at 4, we then move into number 5. And here's another question I get all the time. Doc, how do I, what do I do for hiring? I don't know how to interview. So let's take a look at this interview packet. So we have an interview guide. If you work with me in Discovery, you're going to get the 22-page hiring guide. It's the 5 steps to interviewing an associate doctor. I'll talk about those in just a second, but I want to talk about the 3-legged stool of hiring first. Number 1, objective testing. I know a lot of you do some specific tests out there, the DISC profile and so forth, and those are all nice and things like that. But number 1, there are assessments out there that aren't legal to give because they give you too much information. They're not legal by the government to do these assessments in the hiring. They're post-hiring. One of those is strengths finders. You can't do that until you've onboarded and you've hired a person. But there are really 3 tests that we take a look at. Number 1, they're cognitive. So cognitive tests, what that does is that's a person's intelligence, how smart they are. So when we help doctors hire CAs, what we do is we do a cognitive assessment to make sure that person's smart enough to work in your job. You'd be blown away. Almost 70% of our applicants who apply to certain CA jobs aren't even assessably active cognitive-wise to actually even move forward in the interview process. It's the first thing we do. What we do assume is that when a person's a chiropractor, they have enough intelligence. So we don't do cognitive testing when it comes to chiropractors, but we definitely do cognitive testing, and that's the behavioral testing. It's how they're going to respond. It's going to be how they're going to behave. Take charge, people, patients, and systems. We can test that, and it's so important. The afferent or effective testing, what that is the strength finders test. It's what motivates people. It's what people love to do. Really important post-hire, but you can't do those pre-hire because they give you too much information. Number 2, subjective. It's the interview. It's the 5-step interview guide. So just high level, you can get the guide if you go through the discovery process with us, but you can get it on our website too. It's $500 value, but something we give during the discovery process. But number 1, what's the phone interview look like? What's really cool when we do a discovery process with you, we have a concierge service, and the concierge service will actually, our team will give you a call after we find a hot lead or a match for you and give you the download in 10 to 15 minutes of what this person's about. We're going to create an interview process, which I'll talk about in a couple minutes, but we're going to create an interview guide to actually have a conversation with them on the phone before we'd even get them into the behavioral assessment. So it's step by step, guys. But what we want to do is you're going to do an interview on the phone. The second we suggest is doing an in-person interview. The third is a job shadowing / adjusting interview. The fourth is what I will tell you, the reference calling, which is the third historical. I'll talk about that in just a minute. And then the fifth would be the dinner interview. You take them out for dinner, hopefully sit them down with you and your significant other and their significant other. And this is where that personality really comes out. That's the core values. What are they looking for? Why are they moving to your community? What's their family like, and so forth. You get a little bit deeper with them and find out if they're that good match for you. But the third one is by far the most likely leg of this hiring stool that's missed. And that's the historical, the references. I'm going to tell you, what's the greatest predictor of the weather today? It's the weather from yesterday. What's the greatest predictor of how this person is going to work in your practice? Maybe how they're going to behave, if they showed up for work, if they had a good character, if the last person liked them. It's to call their last job if they're no longer working there, or call their last couple jobs instead of the one that they're working in right now, just to not ruin a relationship they may have at another practice. But it's to call their references. Please, if you do anything in this hiring guide, please call references. You're going to find out how these people are built, and it's only going to help you in the long term. So as we go through, once again, we've nailed number 1, we've nailed number 2, we hit number 3, number 4, and number 5. Now what we do is you're going to hire, right? So number 6. So what I will tell you is this, is that when you hire the right person, it's going to change your practice. So many of you can raise your hand out there right now, thumbs up, hearts, whatever it is, that you know when you get the right doctor in your practice, what that does to your practice. So I am a practice owner. I've opened 3 practices. We have 1 big practice now, and I have 3 associates that are with me. Just as a reminder, I told you a little bit ago, but one's been with me for over 10 years, 1 for 5 years, and 1 for 3 years. And it is pure joy. It is so fun to have this team together. 7 CAs, 5 doctors. I say 5, I said 3 associates. My wife's a doctor as well. She's in the practice, not adjusting at this point, but she runs the front end of our practice, more of our office manager. She's just awesome up there, but she's a chiro as well. And I'm going to tell you, there's nothing better than having a great team together, right? So we have a robust office, 4 doctors seeing patients. We have a 7-figure practice. And I'm going to tell you, it's so fun. But I'm going to tell you, through scar tissue, like I said before, there's problems with hiring wrong. And I have the scar tissue, and I've done that. And by the way, I'm a coach as well. And I coach doctors through Chiro Matchmakers, and I hear the horror stories. I hear the brutal reality of what doctors have gone through. And a lot of times what causes them to put their hooves down or their feet down and drag them along sometimes during the process, they know they need it, but they're so scared because they were burnt before for thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they lost patients, and they lost teams, and sometimes lose offices. So to do this right is so important, because it's awful and painful when you do it wrong. So getting the right doctors on your team, and this is so important, and this is my passion. My passion is to help doctors get the right teams, because of what my wife and I went through in our first associateship, number 1. But number 2 is that if we have better doctor relationships, doctor-associate relationships, what this becomes is this becomes a win-win-win. A win for you as the owner, a win for the associate in a great position being taken care of and helping lots of people. And number 3, those people, those patients that you treat. What's worse And what's wrong is the problem is the lose, lose, lose. Why do something that you're not great at? Why go and do the hiring process yourself when there's a team of people, team of doctors and their staff out there that can help you do that? I'm going to tell you this. I'd love to jump on a call with you. I'd love to help you understand a little bit more our process, answer any questions for you. Love to do this brainstorming session. Once again, it's complimentary. I'm Dr. Mark Mouw. What I would love to do is help you save some time, energy, focus, and money in the long run. So hopefully meet you soon. Appreciate you. Thank you for your time and have an awesome evening.